Is it safe to travel to Sri Lanka? That's a question more and more travelers are asking as the island nation reclaims its place on the global tourism map. It's a country that has seen its fair share of conflict, hardship, and headlines, but also offers some of the most beautiful coastal scenery, warm-hearted hospitality, and rich cultural experiences anywhere in South Asia. Hi, I'm Stephen from the Travel Safety Network. I've spent over 25 years working around the globe in industrial safety and risk management. From oil rigs to remote mines and unstable conflict zones, I've developed an eye for spotting risks, building safety plans, and making informed decisions when traveling. And now I've turned my focus to helping travelers like you understand the real-world risks of the destinations you want to explore, beyond the hype, beyond the headlines. In this video, we're focusing on Sri Lanka, an island nation that many travelers dream of visiting, but that often comes with lingering concerns about political unrest, civil strife, or economic instability. So let's dig in. Sri Lanka has been through a lot in recent decades. A brutal civil war that ended in 2009, a series of devastating terror attacks in 2019 that shook the tourism industry to its core, and more recently, a widespread economic crisis in 2022 that led to shortages of fuel, medicine, and even basic supplies. For many travelers, these events have understandably left a lasting impression. But they also raise a critical question. What does safety in Sri Lanka look like today? The short answer is, it depends where you're going, how prepared you are, and how well you understand the current situation on the ground. According to travel advisories from the US State Department, Global Affairs Canada, the UK's FCDO, and the Department of Foreign Affairs in Australia, Sri Lanka is currently open for tourism, but travelers are advised to exercise a heightened degree of caution. These advisories don't warn against travel entirely, but they do highlight areas where extra vigilance is warranted, especially during political demonstrations, which can occur with little warning and occasionally turn violent. Let's talk about the political climate first. In recent years, Sri Lanka has seen its share of unrest. Following the 2022 economic meltdown, there were mass protests, changes in government leadership, and deep public frustration over inflation, fuel shortages, and lack of access to healthcare and basic goods. While things have stabilized significantly since then, especially in key tourism zones, there is still a general sense of political fragility. Protests aren't uncommon, especially in Colombo, the capital, and they can flare up quickly. If you're visiting the city, it's wise to stay clear of government buildings, large public gatherings, and sensitive areas like the Presidential Secretariat or key government plazas. On the crime front, the picture is mixed. Violent crime against tourists is relatively rare, especially in coastal resort areas or popular tourist towns like Kandy, Gale, and Ella. But petty crime, like pickpocketing, bag snatching, and theft from guest houses, is still a concern. In busier parts of Colombo or crowded train stations, it's wise to keep your valuables secured and your bags zipped and close to your body. Also, avoid walking alone at night in unfamiliar or poorly lit areas. Like many places around the world, opportunistic crime is driven more by economic desperation than anything else, and unfortunately, tourists can sometimes be viewed as easy targets. Let's talk about scams. In many parts of Sri Lanka, particularly around tuk-tuk drivers or unlicensed tour operators, tourists can be approached with offers that sound too good to be true. Whether it's overpriced gemstone stores, fake travel agents, or aggressive pressure to book excursions, there's a need to be cautious and selective about who you deal with. This doesn't mean you can't trust local vendors. In fact, most Sri Lankans you'll meet are honest, kind, and deeply proud of their country. But a healthy dose of skepticism is part of staying safe. Now let's address some of the other local safety concerns that are just as important, especially for travelers from North America or Europe, who may not be used to some of the realities of tropical travel. Water safety in Sri Lanka is a real issue. Tap water is generally not safe to drink, even in high-end hotels. You'll want to stick to bottled or purified water for drinking and brushing your teeth. Food safety is usually reasonable in reputable hotels and restaurants, but street food, while tempting, can be hit or miss depending on where you are. Make sure hot food is served hot, and avoid anything that's been sitting out in the sun. If you've got a sensitive stomach, it might be wise to ease into local cuisine slowly. Healthcare access in Sri Lanka varies greatly depending on where you are. In Colombo and other major cities, there are several private hospitals with decent facilities and English-speaking doctors. But in rural or remote areas, the quality of care can be basic at best. If you're planning any kind of adventure tourism, like hiking in the hill country or surfing on the coast, make sure you have comprehensive travel insurance that includes emergency evacuation. It's also a good idea to bring a basic medical kit with you, including any prescription meds, as pharmacies may not always carry what you need. Socially and culturally, Sri Lanka is a place of deep tradition and strong religious values. It's a predominantly Buddhist country, but with significant Hindu, Muslim, and Christian minorities. Generally speaking, Sri Lankans are very warm and hospitable to visitors. But travelers should be aware of cultural sensitivities, particularly around religion and modesty. Dress conservatively when visiting temples or religious sites. Avoid public displays of affection, and be respectful in conversations about politics, religion, or the country's troubled history, especially the Civil War, which still leaves scars. For LGBTQ+ travelers, Sri Lanka is not the most progressive destination. While homosexuality remains criminalized under colonial-era laws, enforcement is rare. That said, public expressions of same-sex affection may attract unwanted attention or social disapproval, especially outside major urban areas. Solo female travelers should also exercise additional caution, particularly when traveling at night or taking public transportation. While harassment is not widespread, it can occur, and it's always best to travel in pairs or groups where possible. Let's touch on transport. Getting around in Sri Lanka can be an adventure in itself. Buses and trains are cheap and connect most of the country, but they're often overcrowded and not always the safest option. Trains, in particular, are scenic but can be chaotic, especially in peak season. Tuk-tuks are ubiquitous and useful for short distances, but always agree on the fare before getting in, or use a metered tuk-tuk where available. For longer trips, consider hiring a car and driver through a reputable agency. Roads can be winding, poorly maintained, and filled with unpredictable traffic, so self-driving isn't recommended unless you're very comfortable behind the wheel. Now let's talk about some geography. Sri Lanka is small, but incredibly diverse. Coastal areas like Bentota, Marissa, and Unawatuna offer gorgeous beaches and laid-back vibes. The hill country Ella, Nuwara Eliya, and Kandy is cooler, lusher, and full of breathtaking landscapes and tea plantations. The north and east, areas like Jaffna and Trincomalee, are more off the beaten path and were heavily affected by the Civil War. While they're open to tourists, infrastructure is less developed, and safety can vary by region. If you're planning to explore those areas, keep a close eye on travel advisories and talk to local guides. Speaking of travel advisories, as of this recording, most Western governments do not discourage travel to Sri Lanka outright, but they do caution travelers to remain alert, avoid political gatherings, and be aware of economic and infrastructure challenges that could affect your trip. The US State Department, Global Affairs Canada, the UK's FCDO, and Australia's DFAT all offer detailed guidance and updates. It's worth checking their advisories regularly as your trip approaches. So, is it safe to travel to Sri Lanka? The answer, like most destinations, is that it's not black and white. For many travelers, especially those sticking to major tourist corridors and traveling with awareness, Sri Lanka is not only safe, but incredibly rewarding. The people, the culture, the nature, the food, it's all here. But you need to be prepared. You need to travel smart, and you need to stay informed. Now, before we wrap up, I promised you a surprise. If you're the kind of traveler who loves uncovering hidden gems, here's one for your list. Head to the southern coast near Tangale and look for a little village called Rakawa. Not only does it have stunning, undeveloped beaches, but it's also home to a turtle conservation project, where, if you're lucky, you can watch sea turtles come ashore to lay their eggs under the moonlight. It's one of those experiences you won't find in the guidebooks, but it's moments like these that remind us why we travel in the first place. Thanks for watching. If this video helped you feel more confident about traveling to Sri Lanka, or gave you something to think about, please like, subscribe, and share it with anyone else planning their next big trip. And don't forget to check out our other safety videos from the Travel Safety Network. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and as always, travel smart.